The National Association of Realtors has reached a $418 million settlement in an antitrust lawsuit. The case will have major implications on the real estate industry. The settlement is set to take effect in July, pending a judge's approval. It is expected to change a number of rules and guidelines set by the National Association of Realtors, thought to have artificially raised home prices. The most critical change will come to the standard 6% agent commission, which is likely to be lowered. And here to explain more is Mark Stapp, the Fred E. Taylor Professor of Real Estate at Arizona State University. Mark, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it. For those not familiar, can you give us a quick summary of the case itself, the settlement, and why it matters?
So the case is really about a rule that the Association of Realtors had, and it had it in conjunction with the multiple listing service, which is a separate entity but related party in some regards. And there was a requirement when someone listed their homes, the broker was required to have a mandatory offer of compensation to a buyer's broker. And it wasn't a negotiable item with the seller typically, and it was required to be included. And sellers, in the case of the plaintiffs in this case, said, hey, wait a minute, why are we paying the buyer's agent? Why isn't the buyer paying them? And that gave rise to this complaint, and ultimately the suit and the settlement, which calls for the National Association of Realtors and the Multiple Listing Service to not only no longer require, but prohibit statements like that. And so they're going to make it such that the buyer is now going to be responsible for paying the broker that represents them in a transaction. It's not to say that the seller can't agree to do that, but now it's become a fully transparent, negotiable aspect of the sales process.
So what about someone who's selling a home? How is this going to impact them?
You know, the idea was, or at least some people believed, that this is going to help lower prices. It doesn't really have much effect on them other than the fact that they may not have to pay a full 6%. So they can say to their listing agent, I'm only going to pay you 3%. That's what you were going to get if you shared this commission with someone else anyway. And so they are possibly going to get more money in their pocket. I don't think it's going to lower home prices.
Okay.
But I think what it's going to do is result in sellers possibly ending up with more net proceeds from their sales.
Okay, well, that's good for them. What about real estate agents? Obviously, they work off of commission. So what kind of impact will it have on them?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because they used to be able to rely on the fact if I have a representation of a buyer that I'm going to get paid, and I'm probably going to get paid somewhere around 2.5%, 3%. And that no longer is the case. So they have to enter into what they call buyer broker representation agreements now. And I believe that they're going to have to submit that agreement every single time that they want to engage in a showing or negotiation of the purchase of a house with the selling agent. And so it's a little bit more cumbersome. One of the things that it's likely going to do is it's going to make it more difficult for buyers on the low end to afford buying a home, because this will be more cash out of their pocket. Previously, when you purchased a home, you had the full purchase price as part of what you were including in the mortgage that you would take out. And so those commissions were already baked into it. In this case, the buyer side of the equation is no longer baked into that mortgage, and mortgages prohibit paying buyers' brokers out of mortgage commissions. So, one of my fears is those who can least afford it are the ones going to be impacted the most, and that's buyers, below the median income, buyers at the affordable entry level.
Yeah, and that was what I was going to ask you. I mean, that's a big concern for a lot of people. Can they buy a house now, or should they rent? Really quickly, almost out of time, but what would you suggest people do right now who are sort of, trying to figure that out in this economy?
Yeah, I think you have to be very aware of what your own financial resources are. What you don't want to do is become house poor, right? So you chase purchasing a house, you spend all your money and don't realize that owning a house can sometimes be very expensive. And you don't want to see people get in trouble financially by having spent all of their available resources to buy it and then find it to be a stress. So I think you really have to do some soul searching and budgeting, and don't take on more than what you're capable of taking on.
Yeah, very good advice, Mark. Thank you so much. We appreciate you weighing in. Thanks so much.
Most welcome. Have a good day.
You too.